So screen sharing is not coming, huh? Screen sharing currently it is shown disabled.
Now available?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start.
Yeah, please. प्रतीक भाई एक मिनट खाली जस्ट मृगांक भाई इंट्रोडक्शन ने करिए.
Yeah. Sure.
સ્ક્રીન એમ જ રહેશે.
એમને ઓફ કરવી પડશે.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
ખાલી સ્ક્રીન શેરિંગ ઓફ કરજો ને એક વખત.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. A very good evening, learned faculty member CA Pratik Bhai Vora, Vice President Dhruvin Mehta, Honorary Secretary CA Sridhar Pesha, other office bearers, members of the managing committee, fellow participants, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all of you in this first kind of its series on reassessment. Nowadays, Section 148 is a talk among the tax professionals, assessee, and tax officials. Lot of notices has been issued on Section 148 across the nation. For this, one must be updated and educated on the same section. For this, we have invited Mr. Pratik Vora and CA Anuj Shah, who will deal with the subject in depth. The intention and logic behind organize this series is to keeping in mind that Section 148 reassessment is currently and ongoing further will be most powerful section for tax authority to use before the assessee. As a professional, he or she must be fully aware with latest judicial pronouncement to argue the case before the authority. There are a lot of questions in mind amongst the tax professionals that whether notice is valid, which is issued after 31st March 2021, etc. But before going into the validity and legality of the notice, one must be aware with the bare provision of the section, and it has to be understood right from the beginning. So keeping this in mind, we have launched first classroom series on virtual platform where there are limited participants who can interact with the learned faculty just like a classroom, where we all are used to study right from our childhood. The series will start from the basic and ended up with the advanced knowledge in form of latest judicial pronouncement. I am very much confident that this series will prove to be the feast of knowledge on Section 148. Even many SSC come forward to file the writ before the Honorable Gujarat High Court and also before the other Honorable High Courts across the country to challenge the notice issued under Section 148. So in coming days, I'm sure Section 148 will be the crucial one. After completion of this series, I'm very much sure that all the participants will be immensely benefited with the expertise knowledge of our learned faculty, CA Pratik Bhai Vora and CA Anuj Shah. With these words, I declare that the series on the subject is open and started. And finally, I would like to say that it has to be said that the strong roots produce beautiful leaves, and a tree with strong roots laughed at storms, meaning thereby, if your knowledge is right from its roots, you can always produce the better results and face all the coming challenges. So get the knowledge on Section 148 from its basic and get updated. Thank you very much. With this, I request Honorary Joint Secretary CA Parth Doshi to introduce today's speaker, CA Pratik Bhai Vora. Thank you.
Thank you, President sir. It is great pleasure for me to introduce CA Pratik Vora. Sir is a great qualified chartered accountant. He has secured All India 41st rank at final level. He has cleared certificate course on international taxation from ICAI. He has post-qualification work experience of more than 11 years in industry and consultancy. He has worked in different industries, including infrastructure, ports, shipping, logistics, pharmaceutical, and integrated steel manufacturing. Currently he is working with the Dhruva Advisory LLP at its Ahmedabad office as a principal corporate tax division. He has successfully represented complex matters relating to direct taxes before various income tax authorities. He is regularly contributor of articles for leading tax publishers. With this brief introduction, I welcome today's faculty CA Pratik Vora sir. Sir, now dais is for you.
Yeah, thanks Parth. Good evening everyone, and thanks Mridang Bhai and Sridhar for providing us this opportunity to share our thoughts on the topic. So I will share my screen. Just a second. Yes. So is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the topic today is understanding of the reassessment proceedings. So we all know that Finance Act 2021 has made subtle changes in the income tax provisions relating to reopening of the assessments. These amendments not only include the time limit for which a reassessment can be opened, but also includes the criteria and the approving authority and the basis on which reassessment can be done. So it would be interesting to understand first what is the existing regime, and also then to understand what are the changes that would be effective from 1st April 2021. Currently, the notice is issued prior to 31st March or under the extension provided for the applicable regime. The procedure before amendment to Finance Act 21 would be applicable. And therefore, it is in our interest to understand the current regime thoroughly, because that would be applicable to our ongoing proceedings. Yeah. So, friends, first of all, before going to the reassessment, let us understand why there is a need of reassessment. So, when required under the Income Tax Act, we have to file our income tax return. Once we file income tax return, that gets processed under section 143(1) and intimation is received. And our return could have been accepted, or there may be certain additions to it. 143(1) is a centralized processing, and there are only limited additions that can happen. The department has option to do the scrutiny assessment under section 143(3), whereby they will call for the details and the powers are not restricted to make the additions. In that proceedings, if assessee is failed to furnish the information, then assessing officer has power to make the base judgment assessment. Even after that, if an order is found that there is some error in the order, that error could be either apparent from the record and on a non-debatable issue, then 154 rectification proceeding could take place. And if it is found by the superior authority that order has been passed prejudicial to the interest of the revenue, then department can initiate revision proceedings. Okay, so if an order that has been passed by an assessing officer, if there are errors or omissions, then enough mechanics has been provided under the Act. One is to rectify by the AO, and the other is revision by the Commissioner of Income Tax. But now what happens is that normally an assessment proceedings that has been once completed is considered to has reached to the level of finality, and therefore it is not open for assessing officer to reopen it without following prescribed guidelines. And these guidelines have been provided under section 147 of the Act. 147 of the Income Tax Act provides power to the assessing officer to reopen the assessment which includes also the concluded proceedings, and therefore this power have to be with some checks and balances. These powers are not wide enough, and there has been safeguards built into the provisions to ensure that assessing officer do not abuse these powers. Constitutional validity of Section 147 have been challenged earlier, and High Court have upheld its validity, saying that enough safeguards have been built into the provisions, which are in the nature of requiring assessing officer to record the reasons and obtaining approval from the higher authority. We will deal in detail the provisions laid down under the Act. So Section 147 of the Act says that income escaping assessment. So if the assessing officer has reason to believe, this 6 or 7 liner section is very important, because almost each word has its significant importance and can invalidate the proceedings if not followed in true spirit. So Section 140, if assessing officer has reason to believe that any income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment for any assessment year, he may, subject to the provisions of Section 148 to 153, assess or reassess the income, and also any other income which subsequently came to his notice during the proceedings. He has power to assess that income also. Not only he has power to assess the income, he has power to reduce the loss or any other allowance that has been provided. Even if income is assessed is the same, but if it has been assessed at a reduced rate, then he has power to also apply the correct tax rate. Yeah. So few important aspects of Section 147 is that the belief should be that of assessing officer, and assessing officer should record the reasons, and he should have reasons to believe, not only the reasons to have only suspicion. Then another aspect is that reason should lead to income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. We will deal in detail with all these aspects, but these are very important phrases which has been laid down in this 7-liner section. Okay, so Section 147 has 3 proviso and 4 explanation. We will deal with them in after dealing with other section 148 to 153, and therefore we would understand its relevance better. So I am moving to the next slide, and that is Section 148. So Section 148 of the Income Tax Act requires assessing officer that before making an reassessment, he has to issue notice under Section 148 requiring assessee to furnish return of income by a specified date, and return so furnished would be treated as return furnished under Section 139 of the Income Tax Act. And again, such deeming fiction that return so furnished would be deemed as return as furnished under Section 139 of that has also certain connotations. So it would be deemed to be return furnished under Section 139 of the Act. There is also a requirement that such before issuing such notice of requiring assessee to file return, assessing officer is duty bound to record the reasons. Not only the requirement of recording reason is prescribed, even the timing of recording the reasons have also been prescribed. So such reasons to be recorded before issuing of the notice. Now, 149 deals with the time limit within which a notice can be issued. So notice under Section 148 can be issued within 4 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. Relevant assessment year would mean the year for which income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment is being assessed. So there is a time limit within which a notice can be issued. So within 4 years, powers are there. 4 years would get extended to 6 years if income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment is more than ₹1 lakh. Now, this second proviso, this 6 years limit, we will have also one more condition, which is first proviso to Section 147, which we will deal in some time. such 6 years would further get extended to 16 years in case such escaped income is in relation to any asset which is located outside India. So, and that asset would include any financial interest in any entity located outside India. Now, also it could happen that in case of non-resident, department can issue notice to the agent of non-resident. Agent so treated under section 163 of that. In such case, notice can be issued only up to 6 years and such extended period would not be available. Again, this 16 years period have been brought into the statute by Finance Act 2012, which is effective from AY 1213. It has prospective application, and we will also deal with it. Whether such period can be applied for previous year also, and up to what period. Now, section 150 is extension of a time limit, which says that even if time limit to issue the notice under 149 is expired, still notice under 148 can be issued if such notice is required to give effect to finding or direction contained in any order passed by any authority in appeal, reference, revision, or in a court proceeding. However, such extended time period is not available if order which is subject matter of appeal is passed at a time when notice under section 144 could not have been issued. So if the original order which is subject matter of appeal in which a direction is issued to reopen the assessment, then there could be two possibilities. If such order is passed at a time when original time limit is not available, then it cannot revive the time limit which is not there. But if that order is passed at a time when 149 time limit was available, and then the court gives a direction that you issue a reassessment notice in any other case, okay? In that case, that period is available still under 150. 151 is a kind of a checks and balance. We say that AO cannot on his own proceed. He has to obtain approval from the higher authority. And if his notice is issued after the 4 years from the end of assessment year, then he has to obtain approval from principal CIT, principal CCIT, CCIT, or principal CIT or CIT. But if notice is issued within the timeline of 4 years, then, and AO is not a joint commissioner, then he has to obtain approval at least from the officer above him who is of the rank of JCIT. So this safeguard is built into, and it is also to be noted that approving authority should not act as a rubber stamping authority. He should go through the facts, the proposal put by the assessing officer, that why, based on the reasons recorded, why he is forming a belief that he is of the opinion that income is escaping assessment, then CIT or JCIT has to make application of his mind and ensure that form of belief that it is a fit case for reopening, and then only it has to approve. If we prove that CIT appeal or sanctioning authority has, without application of mind, acted merely as a rubber stamping authority, we can substantiate it based on certain discrepancies in the reasons recorded and the information with the records of the department. We can definitely challenge the reopening. Then there is section 152, which says that if assessee demonstrates that he has already been assessed at a sum or a tax liability that has been determined is at least to that is at least same or higher than what would it be if we include income alleged to have escaped assessment. If he has already been assessed at that rate, then there would not be AO is duty bound to drop the reassessment. There is 153(2) which talks about time limit of passing reassessment order, and such time limit is computed from the date of issuance of the notice. So it is from the end of the financial year in which such notice is served. So within 9 months from the end of the financial year in which notice under section 148 was served upon the assessee, assessing officer is duty bound to pass the order under section 147. We should also note that such time limit is also subject to general explanation that has been provided in section 153, which provides exclusion of certain time period, which is like if a reference has been made to like valuation officer, or reference has been made to competent authority for obtaining certain information. And if some time limit has been taken for say like read petition or proceedings has been stayed because of the court order, then that time period would be excluded. So now going back to the provisos and the explanation to section 147. So we have seen that section 149 provides that time limit of more than 4 years and up to 6 years is available if income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. Yeah, and that income is more than 1 lakh rupees. Now the question is that such powers are also restricted by the proviso to section 147, which says that if assessee has not failed in filing the return under section 139 or in response to a notice issued under section 148 or 142, and also he has been assessed under section 143(3) in original assessment, and also that he has disclosed fully and truly all material facts relevant for the assessment, then time limit for issuance of notice under 148 cannot exceed beyond 4 years. That now the question, another proviso, second proviso is dealing with the income chargeable to tax with respect to foreign assets. So it says that with respect to foreign assets, such a limitation of 4 years would not be applicable. Then the period of 16 years would be applicable. Third proviso is relating to doctrine of partial merger. So if original assessment has happened and the matter is in appeal or revision proceedings, then on that aspect on which matter is pending before any authority, either in appeal or revision or reference, then on that aspect reassessment cannot be made, but it can be made on other aspects. Yeah. So now coming to the explanation. So there are 4 explanations to the section 147, and that is we have seen that first proviso deals with the situation when there is no failure on the part of assessee to disclose fully and truly all material facts. Then there is an explanation which says that if AO is provided with books of accounts or other evidence from which with reasonable due diligence material evidence could have been discovered by the assessing officer, still it should not be deemed that there is true and full disclosure. Probably this validity of this explanation need to be evaluated in light of other decisions. But only point is that if you have buried the AO with so many details and saying and then taking an argument that look in this so many files I have provided a one-liner response to this particular aspect, then you cannot claim that I have made full and true disclosure. It is to safeguard the assessing officer. Now, as we see that 147 is with respect to income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. So explanation 2 has provided certain situations wherein it has been deemed that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. So one is when return of income is not filed, even if the income chargeable to tax is higher than the basic exemption limit. Okay, so the case of non-filers. Second is return has been furnished, but assessment has not been done. Then third is assessment is made, but income has escaped assessment. So assessment has been done, but during that assessment, certain income has been escaped, or they have been charged to tax at a very low rate, or some excessive depreciation have been provided, excessive relief have been provided, or excessive loss has been computed. Fourth aspect is when there is a failure on the part of the assessee to furnish report in respect of international transaction as prescribed under section 92E. It is important to see that here the requirement which has been laid down is failure to furnish the report. And it does not talk about that if you have furnished the report, but there is insufficient information is furnished. So a transaction which is required to be disclosed, but that has not been disclosed in that report. What would happen to that cases? But again, here only deeming fiction. If AO can prove based on that actual aspect that based on non-disclosure of the assessee on that aspect, there is income that has escaped assessment, then definitely reopening can be done. If AO has received information from the prescribed authority under section 133C. And another aspect is if department has found that assessee has asset located outside India. Here also it is to be important to note that it is found. So it has some specific active action on the part of department that they have found it, in the sense that there is some failure on the part of assessee to disclose that aspect. Say if assessee disclosed that he has asset located outside India in the return of income, then this clause could not be invoked because it is not found by the department, it is disclosed by the assessee. So this would not be a ground to say that there is a deemed case of escapement. Then one more aspect is that there is 147 makes it explicitly clear that in case the power of AO is to assess the income for which reasons have been recorded, and also other aspects which came to his knowledge during the proceedings subsequently, then he can assess that aspect also. Now, this explanation is say that it is a clarification that irrespective of that such aspect have not been mentioned on the reasons for which reopening has been done, still AO has power to make addition on that issue as well. Also, the fourth explanation is about the foreign assets. So it says that even though this Finance Act, the amendment by Finance Act 2012, which extends the period of limitation for issuing notice in case of foreign assets up to 16 years, it would have effect for earlier assessment year as well. So probably it is a good point in time to discuss about this aspect. So we have dealt with 147 to 153, what provisions laid down. Okay. So coming back to this aspect, that foreign assets and time period. So the basic aspect is that when an action is to be taken, whatever provisions at that time in the statute book is to be applied. So say in AY 1314, when assessing officer is issuing notice and he found that there is a in case of an assessee, say AY 23, there was certain assets, foreign assets, and he has came to know about it now, say in AY 1314. The question is that can he exercise the jurisdiction of 16 years or it is limited to only 6 years? So the answer to that is a time limit which one expires cannot be extended. That cannot be revived by any subsequent amendment. So 2002-3 related would get expired within 6 years. That don't get extended. But if any assessment years which is live, say at the time of that amendment, that can get further extended. Yeah. So we will deal with aspects of reasons to believe, duty to disclose material facts in later part. Now we will be dealing with how do we proceed with the notice when received. Just a second. Yes. Yeah. So, in the case of GK and drive shafts, Supreme Court has laid down the procedure, because what happens, these are quasi-judicial proceedings, and as we discussed earlier, powers are not absolute. It is with safeguard, and it is to be also understood that principle of natural justice is to be followed. So there were certain uncertainty that whether reasons should be furnished first or assessee should furnish return of income in response to the notice, and at what stage writ petition could be furnished, and what would be the duty of assessing officer when assessee objects to the reasons of reopening. Here it is the root of the procedure. This is a very small decision of GK and drive shaft Supreme Court, but it has been followed as a law, even though it is not part of any specific sections. But as it has been judgment of the Supreme Court, it has been followed as a law. So we will discuss that. So when a 148 notice is issued, assessee should file return of income. Then upon filing the reason, he has right to seek reasons from the assessing officer that why in his case reassessment proceedings have been initiated. Upon such a request, AO is duty bound to furnish the reasons, and that too within a reasonable time. In one of the case, it has been said that reasonable time is 30 days. Even if AO delays in furnishing the reasons, then it creates suspicion, and then he has to substantiate that why there was a delay in submitting the response, in submitting the reasons to the assessee. Once reasons are submitted, then assessee can file objections before the assessing officer, saying that because of these many aspects, he is of the view that notice need not to be issued for reopening. Once assessee furnished that objections, AO is duty bound to dispose of the same, and AO cannot proceed without disposing of the objection. So, and also such objections has to be disposed of by the assessing officer by way of passing a speaking order, and such also a summary rejection would not be a valid rejection, and reproceeding can be paused on that ground itself. If AO just simply mentions that I am not in conformity with the objections raised by the AO, therefore proceeding with assessment, that is not valid. He has to address each of the aspects of the objections that has been raised by way of a speaking order. And once that stage is reached, we have a order of an AO. We can evaluate that whether is it a fit case to challenge before the higher authority, how much merit is there in the case to challenge it at this point in time, or should we go for the normal appellate route, which is let first get the assessment proceeding finished, and then let's matter be agitated by way of CIT appeal route ITET and then High Court, or do we want to prefer writ application directly? So normally the writ jurisdiction is an extra ordinary jurisdiction. It is not a usual mode. It is special powers. So that has to be used only only upon following certain grounds. And that is when there is no jurisdiction on AO, or it is in violation of principle of natural justice, like reasons have not been supplied or objections have not been dealt with properly, or it is without authority of law, in the sense that notice is issued outside the time limit, or when there is a challenge to the statutory provision itself. Correct? In that case, assessee can prefer writ. So, while determining whether a writ is to be filed or not, one has to prove that there is fundamental violation of the fundamental aspects of the reassessment provisions. And it is not that in every case writ can be entertained. I have mentioned the decisions in which case High Courts have permitted the assessee to prefer the writ mechanics directly, and argument of the department that there is an alternative remedy has not been taken as a ground to reject to exercise writ jurisdiction. Yeah. So now coming to the aspects of reason to believe. So what constitutes reason to believe? So definitely it has to be higher than reason to have suspicion. Okay, but there has to be, it should not necessarily be so strong that he reached to a level of passing an assessment order. Okay, there has to be certain tangible material available in front of assessing officer, based on which man of an ordinary prudence would draw an inference that income in this case is escaped assessment. And these are the powers which has been vested to assessing officer, and he can apply his subjectivity to that. But that is to be ensured that they are not to be used arbitrarily. And he can demonstrate that whether he has that reasons to believe or not. And in order to ensure that what are the bases on which he is reopening, there is a requirement of recording that reasons. So only through recording that reasons, AO is expressing how he has formed that opinion. So it is not necessary that there has to be finality of the decision that has to be made. There has to be prima facie some material available based on which he can reopen the case. Yeah. So again, 147 deals with reassessment is to be done by assessing officer. So if any other officer, even though he howsoever higher in the rank compared to the current jurisdictional assessing officer, he cannot make reassessment. So it is only the jurisdictional AO who can make reassessment and can issue that notice. And also the reason to believe should also be recorded by the jurisdictional AO, and it has to be his own belief. So take an example that he has got information from investigation wing, or he got audit objections. He cannot simply, based on audit objection or based on information that he has received from investigation wing, proceed for issuance of reassessment. What he has to do is, he has to make application of his own mind, make some preliminary inquiry based on the information available with him. He has to check whether that transaction has happened or not. Say there is an information from investigation wing which suggests that this assessee has taken an entry of share capital, bogus share capital of say ₹1 crore from this particular party. At least, and the assessee has filed his return of income, has furnished his balance sheet, he has been assessed under 143(3). Details are with the assessing officer. He has to see the details available with him and check from that details that at least there is an increase in share capital in that assessment in that particular year or not. If there is no addition in that year, it means he has not applied his mind. Based on the information which is available with him, he could have very well checked that such transaction has not happened in the case of assessee, and there is therefore no case of reopening. So, or say if he is mentioning say 1 crore of income as escaped assessment, whereas assessee altogether has raised additional capital of say only 10 lakh rupees. These are the prima facie information based on which one can prove that whether there was an application of mind by AO or not. And also there has to be live link of the material and the income escaping assessment. Live link means the material should be capable of suggesting that income has escaped assessment. Okay, so it should not be merely an AIR entry which says that there has been sale of property by a particular person, because sale of property would not necessarily lead to suggest that income has escaped assessment. There would be a corresponding cost. It would have so happened that there would have been loss after considering indexation. So AO should also get into this aspect that whether the material suggests that there is a live link between the material and also income escaping assessment in the case of assessee. Also, what happens is that sometimes there is an audit objection, and to which assessing officer himself makes a answer that in his view, for the reasons mentioned, he is of the view that there is no income that has escaped assessment, and later on, based on CAG objection, he has to reopen the assessment. In such cases, we can consider that when AO himself is of the opinion that there is no income escaped assessment, merely based on some audit objection, he cannot reopen. And we have a case of Gujarat High Court in case of Adani Exports, wherein it has been observed that if in the independent opinion of AO, there is no escapement, but the notice under 148 issued by him as instructed by any superior authority, then the impugned notice has to be quashed. Now the question is change of opinion. So it is important that we have already said that AO don't have power to review his own assessment order. So if the set of facts remaining the same, the set of information available to the assessing officer is the same, and now he is reopening the assessment, even if it is within that 4 years, that is not permitted if he has already made an assessment under 143.3. Because information was already in possession, he has dealt with that information, formed and view, and then it is not open for him that now he is better equipped, better knowledge, have better knowledge of the subject matter, and therefore he is finding that such income has escaped assessment. Or on a better scrutiny of the facts, he come to know that certain aspect has escaped assessment. So mere change of opinion is not permissible. And so it is on the duty of the department to ensure that the officers are competent. A proceedings once done attains finality, and it can be reopened only if there is some fresh tangible material is available or there is some failure on the part of assessee to truly and fully disclose material facts. Again, the duty of the assessee is to disclose material facts, and what inference is to be drawn from that facts is up to assessing officer. And incidental information need not to be provided. If assessee has taken certain positions, aggressive tax positions based on certain tax precedents, he need not to invite attention of the AO and say that, look, I have taken that position. He has to provide information in that aspect, and it is for the AO to determine whether that position or benefit taken by the assessee should have been allowed to him or not. And if he misses in doing so, it is not open for him to review the same set of facts and reopen the matter. Recently, Supreme Court in the case of Marico in 2020 has said that reopening has been made on the issue on which query have been already raised in the original assessment proceedings, and that has been responded by the assessee. Now then, there has not been any rejection of that explanation. Then it means that it has that submission of the assessee is accepted, and then now changing a view and saying that I would like to reopen on that very aspect, that is not permissible. It would be change of opinion. And this change of opinion is important, that argument one can apply even within the timeline of 4 years. There is no necessity that it has to be after 4 years, because if one assessment proceedings once completed, then it is not open for the AO to reopen the same based on the same set of facts. Also, when assessing officer claims that it is based on subsequently certain information coming to his knowledge, his reopening, then reference to such material has to be in the reasons recorded. Reasons once recorded cannot be then supplemented by filing an affidavit in the court proceedings, or that cannot be improved upon while objecting to the this proceedings, assesses reasons, and it should come up from the reasons. Also, if assessing officer's stand is that there was failure on the part of assessee to truly and fully disclose the facts, then also such requirement, such failure on the part of assessee should be mentioned in the reasons. Yeah. So I think someone has raised question. So we can take the question.
Pratik bhai, as you deem fit, if you want to take questions after end of the session, you can take it after end of the session.
Okay, fine.
Or if you want to address the question in between, you can also do that. So there won't be an issue.
So far the flow is fine. Are you with me, or it is?
Yes.
Or any suggestions on the flow? Should I speed up?
Any participant, if anyone is having something to say, yes, they can. Everyone has right to speak. And if anyone is having query, a speaker allowed. Pratik, we are with the flow. We can go on.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So now, coming to certain issues which are there. So these are all hot topics. We find that notice is issued on the dead person, notice is issued on the non-existing entity, amalgamating entity, or entity that got converted into LLP. Okay. So for such certain failures on the department, we are benefiting because of certain aspects. So the requirement of section 147 is that the assessing officer, and 148 is that before making an assessment, assessing officer shall serve notice upon the assessee. So before making an assessment, within that particular time limit, and notice should be served upon the assessee, should be issued in the name of assessee. Okay. So if, say, notice cannot be issued in the name of subsidiary company when department wants to make assessment in the case of holding company. So, and also, if jurisdiction is different, notice can be issued by the jurisdictional AO only. So, it is fundamental aspect, and it goes to the root of the principles of reopening, and that cannot even be cured by section 292B, which only deals with service of the notice and not on the aspect of issuance of the notice. So the main aspect is that notice to be issued in the name of the assessee whose assessment, whose income is escaped. In case of deceased, assessment or reassessment can be made in the hands of the legal representative or legal hands. So deceased person cannot be assessed after his death, and any notice issued in the name of deceased person is invalid because it has not been served onto the legal representative. It has not been issued to the right person. Okay, so the question is that, is there a duty upon the assessee to inform to the department that such person has died and therefore I am a legal heir, and if something, some reassessment or some other notice has to be issued, please issue in my name. So Delhi High Court, in the case of Savita Kapila, it has been held that in the absence of any statutory provision, a duty cannot be cast upon legal representative to intimate factum of death of the assessee to the department. And where PAN record was updated or not updated, or whether department was made aware by legal representative or not, is irrelevant. As long as notice issued in the name of the deceased, it cannot be then improved upon. It is a fatal, it is void ab initio, and that proceeding cannot be taken ahead. Gujarat High Court, similarly, in the case of Chandresh Bhai Jayanti Bhai Patel, has said that now the question comes up that what happens if some legal heirs represent the matter. Then also it has been held that merely because in response to notice issued against deceased, petitioner has informed AO about death of assessee and asked him to drop proceedings, it could not by any stretch of imagination be construed as petitioner having participated in proceedings, and therefore provisions of section 292B would not be attracted. Notice is held to be invalid. Okay, so the question is that when you participate in the proceeding, department tries to bring in that assessee has participated in the proceedings and therefore now he don't have a right to agitate that notice was not served upon him and notice was served upon deceased. But there are two aspects. First is that section itself says that if before completion of an assessment, if assessee raises that issue, then it is a valid issue. And second, I would say that 292B is only curing the aspect of service of a notice, not the issuance of a notice. So if I would say that if notice has not been issued at the first place on the right name, then the entire proceeding would be fatal. Second, assessee there cannot be an estoppel of law. Say that assessee cannot give jurisdiction to the assessing officer that, okay, I am fine, you want to proceed with the assessment, I don't have any issue. That assessee cannot give jurisdiction, that is governed by law. The third aspect is, that is called a principle of waiver. First of all, certain legal rights can be waived only by the persons who knows that what right he has. And secondly, he explicitly waives that right. That is also important. So merely assessee participating in that proceeding would not mean that he has waived his right to agitate the legal right he has. Probably he may not be aware of legal rights he is having at that point in time, and therefore he can raise it and subsequently. Again, similarly, Gujarat High Court in this Durlabai Kanubai Rajpara. So petitioner at first point had objected to issuance of notice in the name of deceased father and had not participated or filed any return. Therefore, the legal representative, not having waived the requirement of notice, not having submitted to the jurisdiction of the AO, the provisions of 292B would not be attracted, and hence the notice has to be treated as invalid. So these are all favorable decisions in case of dead person is concerned. Only thing is that, say if notice in the case of deceased is issued, say, in the month of March, and then we have responded, say, in the month of April, and again a notice has been issued before the time limit to issue the notice has expired in the name of legal representative, in that case, such second notice would be valid. But one cannot issue the notice at the first place in the name of deceased, and then during the proceedings just changes the name and proceed ahead in the name of legal representative. That is not permissible. Issuance of notice under section 148 is sine qua non. That is mandatory requirement, and such notice is to be issued within the permissible time limit. Yeah. So going with the notice issued in the name of non-existent entity. In 2018, Supreme Court, in the case of Skylight Hospitality LLP, has upheld the reassessment proceedings when assessee company got converted into LLP and notice was issued in the name of erstwhile company. But it is looking at the based on peculiar facts of the case, assessing officer of the department has been able to substantiate that the issuance of notice in the name of the erstwhile company was a clerical error, and on all the records that they have mentioned the name of the LLP, and they wanted to assess in the name of LLP. They have by mistake made the issued the notice in the name of company. In such particular fact, Supreme Court has upheld the reassessment proceeding. But interestingly, a year after, in the case of Maruti Suzuki, Supreme Court has said that in case of Maruti Suzuki, there was an amalgamation. Such amalgamation has already been brought to the record. Also in the DRP record, there was a mention of that particular amalgamation has happened. And then notice was issued in the name of the non-existing entity, amalgamating entity. So they have challenged the same before the higher authority, saying that notice itself was invalid. And Supreme Court has held in favor of assessee, saying that assessing officer was informed of the amalgamating company having ceased to exist as a result of approved scheme of amalgamation. And also, as per the Supreme Court decision in Marshall and Sons, the scheme of amalgamation is effective from the appointed date as mentioned in the scheme, unless that has been changed by the High Court while approving the scheme. So from that date, it loses its existence, and notice issued in the name of non-existing entity cannot be proceeded with. So even if assessee has cooperated in the proceedings, there cannot be an estoppel against the law. Yeah. So similar decision has already been given by the Gujarat High Court in the case of Gayatri Microns. Interestingly, recently, Madras High Court, in the case of Vedanta Limited, has noticed that notice was issued in the right pen. So pen selected by the department is correct, but name that has been mentioned in the notice is not correct, because there has been multiple amalgamation and multiple times change of name has happened within a short span of time, from Sesa Sterlite, Sesa Goa, Vedanta. So the department said that when as long as notice issued in the correct pen, and also the wrong name that was mentioned has been cured before the proceeding gets over, and also the fact that there has been so many changes in the name which a man of ordinary prudence would also lose sight of it. So they uphold the proceedings. So the bottom line is that it has been issued in the right pen. As long as it is issued in the right pen, maybe some earlier name that has been picked up would not invalidate the reassessment proceedings. Now, another aspect is that we have dealt with that I would like to pause for half a second, for 30 seconds. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. So, in the case, yeah. So section 148 says that assessing officer would serve a notice to the assessee to furnish return of income, and when assessee furnishes such return of income, it would be considered as return of income furnished under section 139. Section 143(2) says that when a return is filed and assessing officer is proceeding with an assessment, he has to issue notice under section 143(2). So if based on a return that has been furnished, if assessing officer want to proceed with the assessment, there is a requirement to issue notice under section 143(2). And if such notice is issued before filing the return of income, that would be of no use. He has to issue another notice after filing of the return. So once you file a return, there is some mandatory requirement upon the assessing officer to issue notice under section 143(2). Yeah. To produce the articles, produce the evidence in support of the arguments that has been taken. Then the question is, can such lapse be said to be cured by section 292B or 292BB? So this is mandatory jurisdictional requirement. If AO has proceeded without issuance of such notice, then the proceeding would be fatal. Another interesting aspect is that is it necessary that such notice is issued within the time limit that has been prescribed under 143(2)? Take an example that you have been served with reassessment notice in the month of March 21. You have furnished your return of income in March 21, and as per the current 143(2), it has to be issued within 3 months from the end of the financial year in which such return has been furnished. So once a return has been furnished, there is a requirement that AO should issue notice under 143(2) by 30th June 2021. So if you have not received notice by that time, probably there is a case for you to take a plea that now any notice issued under 143(2) is time barred and re-proceedings to be dropped. Certain higher authority decisions are there in this matter, but they were with reference to section 158 BC, and under that section there was specific requirement that before proceeding with a return, there was a requirement to issue notice under 143(2). Here there is no specific mention of the same, but probably there is no explicit mention that such notice is not required, and there is a scope to evaluate to take this stand of if notice is not issued under 143(2) by June 2021. Yeah. Yeah. Another aspect is addition on the other items for which reasons have not been recorded. So say assessing officer has recorded reasons for issue A, and he is not making addition for issue A. He is satisfied with the explanation provided by the assessee. But during the proceedings, he finds that there has been issue B for which income has been escaped assessment. The question is that without making addition for that first issue, can he proceed with making an addition for the second issue for which reasons have not been recorded? Yeah. So there has been a split of decisions. So earlier Bombay High Court and Delhi High Court has taken a favorable view that if assessing officer does not assess income for which reasons were recorded, he cannot assess other income because that proceedings got fatal. If he want to do, he has to raise another notice under 148 if time limit permits, but he cannot proceed with the same proceedings. Yeah, but thereafter Punjab and Haryana High Court has taken a contrary stand, and that stand has been followed by Karnataka High Court as well. So they have said that it is fine even if the original reasons for which reassessment is initiated, there is no addition is done on that aspect. Still, it is fine to proceed with the other aspects, which has came subsequently during the proceedings. And also, Delhi High Court has raised its doubt on the correctness and the applicability of decision by the Bombay High Court in Jet Airways. And the matter has been referred to the larger bench in the case of Jacotia Plastics. So this matter is pending before the larger bench. Yeah. So before proceeding with other aspect, I would like to add on certain other issues which are subject matter of reassessment. One is say question of reopening based on statement recorded or search in case of third party. So I would take an example of say that there is a allegation on the assessee that he has made donation and such donation is bogus. Okay, so the argument of the assessee would be, I have shown that donation in my return of income. My case was assessed under 143.3, and there was no failure on my part fully and truly disclose the material. Department would say that our allegation is that what you have disclosed is not correct. It was false information. And therefore, even though you have disclosed, you have provided me the donation receipts, your bank statement, still, these are fictitious, these are sham. It has been rooted back in terms of, say, commission entries, and it was bogus. In that case, argument of making a full and true disclosure would not come into the picture. But what is relevant is whether assessing officer has live link, he has tangible material based on which he can form such view. So for that, probably it is necessary for assessee to obtain the statement that has been relied upon, or not the entire statement, but at least extract of the statement on which assessing officer is making reliance. And this is part of principle of natural justice. If AO has that statement in his possession, if AO has that records from information wing in his possession, and he's taking action against assessee based on this evidence, based on the principles of natural justice, he is duty bound to provide those evidence which has been relied upon by him against the assessee. So when such case happens, it is necessary to defend the position that to obtain the statement recorded. And second, not only the statement, but even one should make an attempt to obtain the extract of the information that has been obtained from the information wing. Because we have to see that such statement is direct or general in nature. Does it mention the name of the assessee, or it is merely a general and therefore there is only suspicion that you have made donation to that party and some donation of that party is fictitious, so your donation is also fictitious. So probably if it is general, then once you discharge preliminary your onus, one cannot proceed with that. Yeah. And also there is right of cross-examination is also available. Yes. So we would deal with a new reassessment procedure in the next session. However, we will deal with one connected aspect, which is in relation to validity of the notice which has been issued after 1st April. Okay, so in the next session, my colleague Anuj will take you through the nuances of the new reassessment regime. What are the changes and what fundamental proposition which has been discussed in this session would still hold good or they have been given a go by in the new provision. But in connection with the validity, this regime, it is necessary to discuss with the validity of the notices that has been issued. I would deal very briefly about the same. So we all know that notice can be issued, say, within up to 6 years. Because of the Relaxation Act, such time limit has been extended from time and again. Such it has been extended time and again through notification, and notification has extended it first to from 31st March to 30th April and then to 30th June. And then what has happened is that they have made an explanation saying that even not only the timeline but the earlier procedure, like issuing a notice and obtaining an approval or erstwhile approval, would also be applicable for such extended for notice issued such extended time period. What has happened is that by the same time, Finance Act 2021 has changed the reassessment procedure, and that is effective from 1st April 2021. So there is a question before us, is that whether the provision of 148A, which has been newly introduced in the new scheme, that has not been specifically stated. So is it necessary that such a procedure would be followed if notice issued after 1st April 2021? So whether or erstwhile provision would be applicable. So probably more than 2 dozens of writs have been preferred before various high courts, and at least in dozen of the cases, matter has been stayed by the different high courts, which includes, the list is here. We have included only 9 here, but at least in 12 cases, it has been matter has been stayed, and High Court has sought department response. So it is 4 cases of Bombay High Court, 3 Delhi, 1 Kolkata, and 1 Karnataka. And also recently Rajasthan High Court has joined the league. So matter is stayed, but if that we succeed in that, there would be a huge development, because notices issued after 1st April 2021 would say it to be void, because that mandatory procedure under section 148 is not followed by the income tax department, as operation of section 148 is not stayed. What they have done is that erstwhile sections have been extended. But the question also is that, can a notification issued by CBDT, which is a delegated powers, can supersede the powers that has been exercised by the parliament in bringing the new law? So that notifications can be said to be ultra vires the Finance Act 2021, and therefore not to be read down. Luckily, Delhi High Court, while giving interim stay, has said that we are of the prima facie view that 148A procedure should be followed, and also this explanation is unconstitutional because it is ultra vires the because delegated legislation, delegated powers don't have power to extend the repealed law in the guise of clarification under delegated legislation. Yeah, and the provision, erstwhile provision itself are non-existent from 1st April 2021. Then when main provisions are not in existence, that has been replaced, you can't extend the time limit under that. And also it is known that government is planning to bring suitable ordinance to address this issue. So matter was yesterday or day before yesterday was there before the Bombay High Court, but it has been understood that department is yet to submit its response, and the matter has been shifted to 30th September. So all eyes on this aspect, and it would be very interesting development. Yeah. So with this, I would conclude my first session on the current reassessment regime, and would be happy to take any questions which are there.
Yes. So any question from the participant? We are and the faculty is also ready to give the answer of that question. એક સાહેબ એવું હતું કે આજે રીટની અત્યારે વાત કરી એ રીટમાં એનો ડિસિઝન આવે that will applicable to them only. What about the others who have not approached for the REIT? Will it apply for the whole?
So that would not get automatically applied. You have to make you have to submit those case laws in your submissions, and you can definitely take benefit of that. If the REIT, if the ultimate outcome of the court is that that proceedings are to be quashed if notice issued after 1st April. So it is not necessary for you to join that league, okay? But it is only upon the final order of the court, because this is a question of law. It is not necessary that it is to be addressed only in your case. Once a law is said to be having a particular meaning by a court in another assessee, the same can be applied to your case also.
And also that case to case facts will be also differ.
Okay, but this is a question of law. If notice is issued after 1st April 2021 without following the procedure, this is a valid ground to invalidate the notice without going into the merit of the case.
Okay. Okay.
Pratik bhai, I have a question.
Yes.
See, even as of now, the option to file return under Section 148 is not available on the income tax portal.
Yes.
At least I have not seen in last 3-4 days, but before that. Now, so many people are having a notice for which time is completed. Okay. At times, we go to department, they ask to wait. In few cases, we heard that they ask for manual returns also. So what should be done in case of an assessee?
Okay. So first is that recently I got to understand that at least in few of the cases, they have been able to file the return. That is a feedback that I got.
Okay.
Not everyone, but few. And also they are not able to download the acknowledgement. That is the fact. So if they have submitted on the portal, they are not able to see that whether on the records with the list it is appearing that they have successfully submitted or not.
Okay.
So there is no evidence with them that they have filed it. The point is that whenever you are facing a difficulty, you have to lodge grievance before the that address and the CPC and the portal, okay? Through an email, and raise a ticket. Then provide that information by way of a letter that you have made genuine attempt to file the return, which you have not been able to file that because of the issues at the portal, and you demonstrate the efforts that you have taken in submitting grievance and place it on record before your jurisdictional AO. Therefore, some adverse action are not taken against you after passing of 30 days. That is second aspect. If you are so sure that there is no change in your return of income, you can write a letter to the AO that this is my paper return. You consider it as it has been filed in response to notice under Section 148. As and when the portal will start, I will upload the same. These are to discharge onus on our part that we have been made genuine efforts to comply with the notice. What is my understanding is that they are not proceeding based on this. So we may do these things. They will still not issue reasons to us to proceed with the matter, reasons for reopening. So these are genuine, but also they are not taking any adverse action against non-filing of return. It is expected that some clarification from the department would come, that once they would enable that facility seamlessly, that whatever return due to be filed within 30 days, which could not be filed because of this reason, that such period got extended to a particular time. That is expected. But as a prudent assessee, you have to intimate to the department the genuine efforts that you have taken, and department is less likely to proceed on that. So your matter gets stayed in that case. Interesting aspect is that if notice has been served upon you before March 31, and department is duty bound to pass an order under 147 within 9 months from the end of the financial year in which notice is served upon you. So the question is that because of the non-availability of the portal, proceeding that cannot be taken forward, whether they would get that extension or not. Actually, department is curtailing its own time. So it would be interesting to note that when they are giving us that extension, they are extending the department's timeline also to proceed with that proceeding or not. That would be interesting.
Yes, very rightly raised the question by my colleague. But the portal difficulty is genuinely facing by many SSCs right now. And as you rightly said, that we have to give our contention that to jurisdictional officer, we have to submit our returns if there isn't any changes. And I think that will suffice the purpose to the AO.
Yes, at least no adverse action would be taken against you, saying that you have not furnished the return and they would not proceed with other proceedings.
Okay. એક આપણે આ ધીરુભાઈ વેકરિયા સાહેબ એક ક્વેશ્ચન રેઝ કરે છે. સાહેબ તમારું વિડિયો ઓન અને ઓડિયો ઓન કરીને યુ કેન આસ્ક ધ ક્વેશ્ચન.
એમને માઇક નો એક્સેસ છે, પણ તકલીફ એ છે કે હું એમને પ્રમોટ કરું છું પેનલિસ્ટમાં, પણ થઈ નથી રહ્યા.
ઓકે, તો સાહેબ તમારું માઇક અનમ્યુટ કરીને તમે ક્વેશ્ચન પૂછી શકો છો. And sir, Pratik, back to my first question. If any positive result for that read comes, then according to you, just you have to make the application to your particular case, and by that application, you can get the positive result in your case also.
You can have, but I would say that the issue is of large importance to the department. Matter is not going to settle so smoothly. So even if you have the favorable High Court decision, department is going to agitate the same before Supreme Court. Okay. Because say it also covers demonetization period, and at least I would say 30% of the cases notice have been issued after 1421, and they are not going to deprive themselves of this opportunity to reassess because so they would come with all the possible avenues with them, and it would have a long legal battle.
Yes.
So we have to see how well the next step department will take, because as per the media report, they are also planning to have come up with new ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, and also we have to see the legal validity of that ordinance also, whether that can retrospectively validate the action that was taken when ordinance was not in place itself.
Yes. Okay.
Pratik bhai, I would like to ask you a different kind of question, that as a practitioner, what you will suggest to those who are newcomers and who are addressing these 148 notices, or like for the first or second time. So a simple checklist that they should do this to avoid any future issues in answering 148.
Okay, so probably see the success on reassessment depends on your closer scrutiny. Reassessment is highly technical aspect, uh, and the difference between reassessment and assessment is that the rights are limited because this is you already had a chance to assess which you failed, and now you are getting that extra power. So we have to be aware of that what are the safeguards that has been built into the system, what information we should obtain, what are our legal rights. I said that if reopening is based on a statement, then you have a right to obtain that statement from a third party which has been recorded. And unless the statement is very specific against you, then a general presumption cannot be drawn against you. So that is one aspect. So it has to be fact specific. And I would say that one has to go very deeply or again and again the notice under 148, because we have to see that notice has been issued against whose name, whether PAN was correct or not, that entity is in existence or not, whether jurisdiction of that entity has been changed or not. Okay, that is one aspect. If the one pager notice can also, if you scrutinize properly, can save you. You can, if you can find some defect from that. That is one. Second is that when you have the procedure, so don't give away any of your rights. So when you get the notice, file the return in response to that. Unless it is a case of non-existent entity or deceased person. But file a return, then obtain the reasons. And you have to at least go through the reasons at least 4 to 5 times. Because on the first time, you would only be understanding what is his agitation. Second time or third time, you will be closely scrutinizing what he has not done. So probably from reasons you can make up your mind that there is inconsistency. If at the first instance he is mentioning that there is a income escaping of 1 crore, and at the end he is mentioning that income escaping is say 50 lakhs, then there is inconsistency from the reasons itself. The third aspect is that you have right to obtain the approval. You can see that when it has been signed, whether it has been digitally signed. So because that approval of sanctioning authority should also be before issuance of notice. So you should always obtain that signed copy of the approval. That approval has the proposal annexed to that. AO proposes that. And then we have to see within that proposal also he mentions whether he has conducted independent inquiry or not. So, and whether he require approval or not, why he has reason to believe. So also that would come up that whether independent inquiry has been taken place or not. So I would say that very closer scrutiny of the department's communication and your own fact would also be important. I would like to bring to notice that there is a case of Symphonica, Delhi High Court. So assessee won the case by simply bringing out the inconsistency between the reasons recorded. That the allegation, there was inconsistency. At one place they have mentioned that there was bogus loan taken, and at the end they mentioned that bogus share capital transaction was there. And from the records it was visible that in that year neither opening balance or closing balance was of that amount for which it has been alleged, or not that much variation in that during the year also has happened of the loan. So if assessee has not entered into transaction of that value, how you could have initially formed a belief that assessee has taken that loan and that loan is an only entry operator aspect, or there is a bogus share capital transaction. So you can bring out inconsistency from the department's record itself. And you should be aware of your rights, like obtaining statement, right to cross-examine.
Because most of the even tax consultant having tendency, whenever they get notice, they rush to answer it. They don't read it. They rush to answer it. Now,
Yeah. So probably, see, if you win on technical ground, nothing like it. So that is most important to see that you try to take as much ground as possible. So
and
also,
if we are complied to, and thereafter we come to know about that there is a discrepancy.
so there is no, I would say that during the assessment proceeding, you can raise it. Earlier the better, but even if you come up later, like I said, the Maruti Suzuki case, they raised the issue at the later stage, at appellate stage, not I think at the first appellate authority as well. It was taken up subsequently. So if there is a question of law, there is no estoppel against it. If it is against service of notice, there is 292BB would come up in the picture, but for other aspect it would not. But I would still say that earlier the better, because why would get into the aspect that assessee has waived his right or assessee has submitted to the jurisdiction, and why to get into 292BB aspect. So at least during the assessment, you should ensure that it has been raised. And therefore, for reassessment proceedings, I would say one should not rely more from at CIT appeal or ITET level. Groundwork should be done very well at the first instance assessment proceeding.
कोई पार्टिसिपेंट ने कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो प्लीज पूछिए.
I think there isn't any question. So Sridharભાઈ conclude કરીને આપણે next session માં.
So Pratik bhai, thank you for sparing the time and having this wonderful session on 148. We'll be having a second lecture on Saturday, same time. Links will be shared to all the participants. And I hope those who couldn't join can join the Saturday webinar. I just got confirmation from 2 or 3 participants that they couldn't due to some other reason. But yes, definitely we look forward for a Saturday. And also as a note, please attend the session. So if we are not completing this series on the second session, we will be declaring the date of third session that day only.
Thanks Sridhar bhai, and thanks Mrudang bhai for giving this opportunity. And I would also like to say to all the participants for thanks for patient hearing. And I would like to say that please do attend the next session, that is on Saturday. My colleague Anuj has made lot of efforts in preparing presentation, in going through the nuances and highlighting point to point, word by word difference in the old regime and the new regime. So he has put in lot of efforts in identifying the differences, and probably this regime would be a matter of past after a year, because all new reassessment proceedings will be based on the new law, and therefore it is necessary to be at least with the time, if not ahead of the time. And therefore for the next session assumes a lot of importance in terms of, because that would be the law going forward, and it is better to deliberate at this point in time.
Thank you very much Pratik bhai. Thank you all the participants. See you all in the next lecture.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you all.